Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything.
Engagers, today we have somebody again from Spain. This is becoming a trend, which I'm very happy about because I'm living here. I'm very happy here in Madrid in Spain. Today we have Juan. But Juan, before we get started, are you prepared to engage?
Yes.
Let's do this. Let's go. Because Juan Valera, he graduated from Universidad de Salamanca as a Social and Work Psychologist. He is also a collaborator of the project Assessment Game Delphos 3D and also the creator of the CARDS method for communications training. He is the author of the gamification book Gamification en la Empresa. He's the co-author of Conversaciones para Triunfar. And he is also a member of the GamFed, International Gamification Confederation. You might remember a couple of episodes we had with Pete Jenkins as well. He was responsible for institutional relations of the Asociación Nacional de Gamificación, so the National Association of Gamification here in Spain. He was a co-organizer of the Gamification Spain Meetup Madrid in 2014, and he's also now a professor of the master's degree in gamification. He's, of course, a consultant and a designer who manages the development teams for gamified IT projects, usually focused in HR. Along other lines, he is a fan of tech, he's a writer, an illustrator, and an amateur musician. Juan, is there anything important that we left out in that intro that you want to point out?
I think it is a good introduction. I don't have any more to add. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for the listener and for all the people who are interested in gamification, because I think gamification have a good values to translate to other disciplines too. So I think we have a good community. Well, it's only that. Thanks to everybody who are listening.
So Juan, what would you say a regular day with Juan looks like? What do you do in a regular day?
It's a regular day for me. It's a crazy day, because I like order but I don't like routine. So I like to change every day. Usually I have to speak with the customer about the next project. I have to organize more or less the work I have, and I have sometimes I need to read and to look for to research, to look for information, and to create more project or more idea, or to correct all their project or all their text. I write a little, so it's a very, very complicated. Sometimes I stop and I try to tune my instrument, guitar, or draw something to relax, or cook. I stop to do different things other than work.
That sounds very exciting as a day. As you can see, the day of Juan is filled with many, many different and exciting things. So Juan, can you tell us of a time of what you would like to call your favorite fail or first attempt in learning, especially when creating a game, a gamification, a game thinking project? And of course, tell us what you learned from it, how you came out of such a failure. We want to be there with you in this story.
Okay. Well, I have no one, but I have a lot of failures. But one of them, for me, more interesting, because it's at the same time was a failure, but this was a big experiment. It was organizing a game for a game inside a gamification training. We make a role-playing game for negotiation, and we have a group who organize a sequestro,
Kidnapping, yeah.
Yeah. And we have three main roles, who are police, kidnappers, and the victims, okay? And it was very interesting because it was with a lot of group, but in some of them, the people became too much passionate and almost violent, and we have to control that. Each time and with that I learned that we work with a group of people, and we try to put in play the emotion. It's very useful because it's real, and we need that to teach negotiation in a real scenario, but we have to control it, because it could be, this time is broke a chair, so and it was we changed a little the game with the rules that penalize a little more the too much passionate behavior. Okay, so they have to reflect a little more before they act. And that's what's interesting. And I learned that sometimes the game became so passionate that designer cannot control what happened, and we need control in learning, not in gaming, but in learning. And we have in gamification, I think we have to have more control about behavior.
Yeah, to make sure what you're creating, what it's generating. The whole thing about what do you want to make people feel? What will this actually make people feel as well? I think it's very important. And this reminds me, I don't know if you've heard of. I'm trying to remember the name. It was the prison experiment or something like that. I think it was in Munich pretty long ago that it went completely haywire.
Yeah, I think that maybe the Zimbardo, or the Milgram, maybe one of both psychological experiments, social.
Yeah, that they were like the prisoners,
with prisoners,
security guards.
Yeah, Zimbardo, the Philip
It
Zimbardo
went completely
experiment.
Out of control.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes,
it's a very different setting.
Yeah, but it was more or less the same but he previewed 2 weeks of experiment. It lasts only 2 or 3 days because it was a very crazy. And in our case, was only 3 or 3 hours. so it was very, very hard. But it was interesting. But on the other side, the people were very, very happy. They were very, very proud of the behavior and to be aggressive. But for us, was not control.
Yeah, it could have easily gone out of control for sure.
That's it.
So Juan, what would you say is your main learning lesson from that experience? I'm guessing that it could be something around the feelings and the emotions.
Yes.
What would you say, like, condense it in a phrase or in a quick sentence? What would be the main learning you took from that experience?
Is as you said, more or less, is to remember the social psychology experiments and theories. Is very important, and psychological in general. Sometimes we create the experience more passionate for the creativity and for the how thinking about the user experience. We think it would be very, very fun. This experience we thought could be very fun to have this kind of game, but we forget that they are psychological rules, and we have to control the emotions. And that was, I think, as I learned, we have to learn and to remember that it's not easy to control or to preview what the emotions could provoke. And the emotions are not rational. And sometimes when we design, we are very, very rational, and we have to think the balance between a rational side and emotional side. And I think it's important. And that in a social context is even more important, because in individual psychology is easier to control some kind of beliefs and behavior. But when you are with an emotional very high, when the emotions are very high in game, I think you have to be
more conscious of what
more conscious. Yes,
what's going on.
Pay attention for this side. I think
exactly like the consequences of your actions.
Yeah.
And flipping this on its head, Juan, what would you say is a big challenge that you faced and actually solved using gamification and game-based strategies?
Well, usually for me, the big challenges are when we have to make or to try to make an social attitude change. And that's because I am for my psychology phase, psychological phase, is social. In social psychology, is not easy because people are in general when think from an engineering side. So more like if you put an input, you go to have an output. Sure, and psychology now is not still is not a exact science. Okay, we are more exact than other people think, but we have a lot of it's more probabilistic. Okay, and for me it's a challenge because when people ask me a change of behavior in a social space and attitude change, we can have a percentage of success, but it's not easy to get the 100% of success that the customer usually expects. For example, one of these challenges was, and I think we have a good result, but it's still in testing, is to change behavior about health in a community. It's for well, in this case, it's not human resources, but that was a challenge because I think it is implied to not only health focuses behavior, but you have to change your sleep habits, your eat habits, your activity habits, and to mix all habits and knowledge. And with knowledge, it's not easy. Other side in a company, for example, was not easy because we have to change. And this was a very small comportment. Is only to communicate when you have a new learning to communicate to others, to make an application, to share knowledge. And usually people was used to share it in the coffee machine only, but they like to share more in a community, more digital, and was not easy in this area because the manager at the beginning was not very committed. There was a good commitment for the big manager, okay, because they don't understand gamification, because they don't understand digital environment, and at the beginning they were very expecting. But at the end, we with metrics we demonstrate results, and that was a success at the end. And even it was inside the company, it was a very big company. This initiative get a prize, an innovation prize.
Nice.
It was very hard at the beginning.
What did that, in general terms, of course, what did that look like? Because you're commenting that you took the people from the typical water cooler conversation or the coffee machine conversation into a digital world. How did that? How was gamification incorporated into such a solution?
They have a certain point where they can do it with a very hard and annoying formula questionnaire to read. They have to and anybody do it. So we changed doing the tool very easy, looking more like Twitter, and then with a system, we decide what behavior we expect from people, for example, to enter in the system and to write an idea, comments that idea, complete that idea for other people, share that idea, and this new lesson. And at the end was a application more mobile. More easy to work with it, without control of what moment every user do in the platform, and at the end they get a leaderboard in one side, but in different areas, not only in publication. And at the end of the year, they have public recognition of the most important ideas or experience they share.
That sounds very exciting, very nice, and thanks for letting us into that experience. And Juan, we know that you have you created, as we mentioned in the intro, the cards method for communications. That you've had all these projects, that you've done all these things in gamification. You're part of the GamFed. You're doing all these things in gamification, but do you follow some sort of a process, some series of steps? What do you do when you face a project that you want to solve using gamification?
At the beginning, I tried to use the different frameworks they are from Sergio, from Yukachu, and different first systems. It's true, at the end, I was more a mix of all of this, but I follow the first step for me is to know what is the objective, the main goal from the side of customer, okay, of people who ask for the project. But I like to see too what are the goals of the users, and try to make it closer. Okay. And I have to try sometimes to forget what are the design goals because not usually the author, when you are an artist, for example, you can draw a picture or something. You have some preference, and you have to forget it sometimes. So, for me, it's the goal of the customer, the goal of the user. Forget a little my goal, and there to be very, very rational about what are the exact behavior we need to go to the goals, to the business goal, okay? What are the behavior that are to try to organize this behavior in easier, less easier from the side of user, not from the side of the preference of the customer, as sometimes I see. And once I have all of this, I have to begin to think about how to put inside the mechanic or some element of gamification to do it more easy, okay? To graduate it and make the path more easy for a user with gamification.
That makes a lot of sense. And is there any strategy that you use when you're deciding to incorporate this or that game mechanic?
The strategy is it depends of the case. Usually, I try to look at all the big project from the actual moment, from the future with the goal when we get the goal, and we have to make the journey, okay? And I try to use the most collaborative and social strategy that I can, because usually people think more in an individual game. People I refer to customer, they think as in user as individual, and for me we have to think in user as social structure. And usually, if you like a long-term gamification project, and you need to be more collaborative, and you have to think as if you like to create a culture inside the game, okay? And if this culture is in a company, as usually is in my case, I have to think that the culture inside the game has to be similar to the culture outside the game in the company, and that's my strategy: to be collaborative more than competitive. But it's true, competitive is interesting to put emotion inside, and for me, competition is more tactical, and collaboration is more strategical for me.
That makes sense. There's short-term engagement that can be sometimes achieved in competition. That makes sense. So thank you very much for that, Juan.
One thing is important. After you compete, you have to have a time, because competition is you put inside the fast way of thinking, the rapid way of thinking. After that, you have to put inside the game, if you like a long-term space, okay, you have to put up a way to make time for people to reflect. That's for a way of thinking, slow thinking. And if you mix fast thinking with slow thinking, with that, the learning, you can do it more consistent. It's only that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification.
So Juan, what would you say is something sort of a best practice or something that you would say that any gamification project would benefit from? Is there an element, a strategy, a way of thinking? What would you say is a best practice?
Is to learn too much, to read, to share information, to try to research in other projects is a good practice. Not to be very selfish in this field, no, in gamification. Not to, I think, let your ego outside and try to learn from others. I think it's a good idea for gamification. From my side, I think it's a good idea to be stronger in psychological techniques, and research is important too. For example, I use a lot behavior change technique. And if you see a lot of game mechanic, and you see the behavior change list of technique, they are very similar or very symmetric in some way. No,
they can be quite related indeed.
Yeah, it's a lot. And if you like to look for more ideas, you can go deeper in behavior change technique in psychology. And so that's for individual or psychology. But more, if you go to the social psychologist experiment, you can find a lot of ideas too, and inspiration too. But for me, the first is to look in the gamification big field that we are now. There are a lot of projects and gamification research, for example, to be inspired. But more for me, I help myself too in the psychology pillars. Okay.
Fantastic. So, Juan, what would you say, after all we've talked about all the inspiration you get from fellow gamification practitioners, projects, and so on, but what would you say is your favorite game?
My favorite game, well, lately I don't play. I play too much, but usually music. And I like last games was the most game to learn people to code or to think. For me are games that help people to think, and I like games for learning. But it's true that some years ago I liked a lot the strategic games of wars, because for me the relationship between players and the teams and the strategy was very interesting. For me, it was fun, but at the same time, as social psychologist, was very interesting to look for the behavior of the others game.
Is there any game that comes to your mind when you think of those games?
Yeah, for me, it was like an experiment at the same time. Every time I look for the game as an experiment. Even when I was a child, with my friends, every time I like to change the rules to look what happened. So I like games where I can learn something, and I change a lot of games of different types of games. I am not very loyal with a game. No, I like to change a lot.
That's okay, but is there anybody that that you would like to listen to interviewed? Like instead of Juan today, we would have somebody else. Who would that person be?
I see your podcast, and almost on every people I like to listen, you already did, because I think you have a very good selection. I think of my masters in some way. Maybe to continue in the Spanish people. I don't know if you already interviewed Carlos Tardón.
Nope.
He's a psychologist too, and he have a very good experience with gamification in classes in university. He's doctor and university teacher, and I think Carlos Tardón could be a good experience. I like to listen to him more about. Even if I speak with him more or less regularly, but I think it's a good. He can have a good contribution, and more because sometimes we have different ideas, and he have a very personal view in some areas.
Fantastic. And of course, besides your book, the book that you wrote, Gamification en la Empresa, is there any book that you would recommend to the engagers, to the listeners of this podcast, and why?
Well, there are a lot of books that I can recommend. Every book for all the authors you have to have in the podcast in your audio. They recommend the book. I recommend the book for all the people who had write a book in this Professor Game podcast. So I recommend all the audience to listen the other episode and to write the books. But to add something different, I think I have a book that I read from my university times, and it's a book. It's not only a book. I think it's a personal work for a social psychology, very important for me. That was Elliot Aronson, and he is a very interesting. It's very interesting book to understand how the people behave in social environment. And Elliot Aronson had a book called Social Animal. I don't know if you know, and this book have a lot of edition. When I read the first time, this book was I think the half that the book is now, because each year Elliot continued to grow in his book, and I don't know how is the last, but I have 3 versions, and the last is the bigger from the first. So I think it could be a very interesting book, even if it's not the last book, because sometimes we decide to recommend the last book, but not every time the last is the most interesting. For me, that is a very interesting book because it's growing up every time.
Fantastic. So Social Animal
from Elliot Aronson.
Fantastic. And finally, Juan, what would you say is your superpower when creating gamification? What is your sweet spot?
I don't know. Maybe because my brain is very, very mixed. I can mix music element with psychological element, with technical elements, with drawing, cook, agriculture. I don't know. I think because my power is because I love everything in general. Maybe not the football, but football, soccer in Spanish. But everybody bring me to know it. So I think the power is because I like to create something different with different elements. I'm not very, very specialist too much.
So you have a general view of many, many different
things. Yes, I am a specialist for example, when I am drawing, I like to know a lot of aquarelle, of oleo, and I go deeper. But when I go out, I mix that I learned from draw, I mix it with music, with informatic. I don't know. I mix all.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic, Juan. Before we let you go, I would like to know if you have any final quick piece of advice that you would like to leave the listeners with. And of course, tell us where we can find you, if you have a webpage, social media, whatever it is you want to leave us with.
Well, the final advice is to be curious and to go. For example, if you like to work in gamification, in internet, we have a very, very good professional, very, very generous, and they bring a lot of information. I recommend to read, to listen every information they can, to leave a lot to contrast that they read with the real life, and the other was my...
where we can find you, maybe on social media or a web page. Or...
It's very easy. It's very easy because, you put Valera Mariscal, so Juan Valera Mariscal with my two names, Valera Mariscal. It's very easy to find me. And in Twitter, it's Valera Mariscal. My webpage is valeramariscal.com. And in LinkedIn, it's easy to find me.
Fantastic. So now we know where we can contact you. We had that final piece of advice. So thank you very much, Juan, for spending this time with the engagers, giving all of your experience, your knowledge, all that inspiration that we got from today's episode. But for now, it's time to say that it's game over.
Thank you.
Hey, engagers. Thanks a lot for listening to Professor Game Podcast. And if you want more interviews with incredible guests like Juan, then all you have to do is go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started on our email list. That way, we can be in contact and you'll be the first to know of any opportunities that Professor Game might have for you. And before you go on to your next mission, would you like to know how Karen Schreier, the Dr. Gamer mom, has used games and game design for so many things in different aspects in life and different purposes? Then subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.